that going? Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're golden, in fact. Why Everything is Wrong About This Notorious Serial Killer by Thoughty2.
Can't sleep because of noise? This is the gift you're looking for. Quick reminder, the best.
I,
Hey,
I, I don't know what you guys think. I don't tend to like using any sort of like sleep aid type things like melatonin or whatever the crap is because it feels like you have to be able to figure out a way to dial it down naturally if you want to keep doing it. That's my idea. But I guess to each their own.
Thoughty2 here. If I was to host a hypothetical.
Actually, a really good good tip for that: don't sleep in the same room with your phone. Right? Generally speaking, if someone really needs to get a hold of you, they'll get a hold of you somehow. Eh, yeah, I don't know. It just feels like that's one of the best things you can do for your actual sleep cycle. Just don't sleep with your phone in the room, or just don't pick it up if you have it in the room.
Head-to-head tournament to determine the most evil serial killer of all time. Who do you think would win? The safe money would be on history's homicidal heavy hitters. Jack the
Genghis Khan. Although you wouldn't be in the category of serial killer, I guess, but Jeffrey Dahmer, actually, I would maybe. This isn't my field of expertise, though.
Ripper, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. But if you had to bet your entire life savings on just one individual, you could do a lot worse than back the man often referred to as America's first serial killer, H.H. Holmes. During a reign of sheer terror in Chicago in the late 19th century, Holmes is thought to have brutally murdered more than 200 people at a rate of more than 40 per year. Many of his victims met their
Not bad.
maker in a house of death that came to be known as the Murder Castle, built to a labyrinthine plan that only Holmes himself
Sorry, it is bad. I'm just saying, as far as numbers is concerned, he's up there, probably.
understood. The sprawling complex was full of secret passages, trap doors, and soundproofed torture chambers. Holmes lured hundreds of innocent people
That's creepy. Oh, wait. Do you actually remember this one?
to this morbid mansion with murder on his mind. And after killing them in the most horrific ways imaginable, some were dissected, others were stripped of their flesh and sold to medical schools as skeletons, and still others were melted in giant vats of acid. When you take into account the volume and sheer brutality.
Here's one. Is it weirder to have a very clinical, disconnected killer, or to have one who's really into it in a creepy sort of way? I don't know. I feel at least like the clinical one might just kill you quickly. The one who's really into it might, do stuff. Although the Nazis, technically, I guess I don't know if they were morbid or if they were like malevolent or if they just, hey, let's do some experiments on people. There was one where they sewed two like twins together. That's messed up crap. Sorry about that.
Of his crimes, it's hard to imagine anyone that can rival H.H. Holmes for the title of the most evil serial killer ever to have lived. But there's a catch. You see, almost nothing I've told you about H.H. Holmes so far is actually true. Don't get me wrong,
Liar!
I didn't just make it up. Every single detail, the sky-high body count, the castle of death, the
There was something I was gonna look up. Oh, what was it? Oh, the Clifton set. I had mentioned that one in last week's video. There was supposedly maybe this group of people in Britain that had helped with the Nazis or had wanted to help with the Nazis, wanted to sue for peace or something like that. I don't know if that's actually the case. I looked it up afterwards, and it's kind of disputed as to whether it existed or to what extent it existed. But also it's Britain. People need things to be proper, so like I don't think they're necessarily above covering up stuff to maintain a facade.
and torture chambers. It's all a matter of public record. The staggeringly gory story is the
Not that they're unique in that regard, for the record.
subject of newspaper articles, encyclopedia entries, and multiple
I'm gonna read this. All right. New victims of H.H. Holmes found near the blah 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 gruesome find made digging.
documentaries, which makes it all the more strange that the entire thing is utter nonsense. Customize and save with liberty mutual.
I don't know if he should be the one on the back. Maybe the emu would be better. Probably be calmer. No, sorry.
The important thing is, we stayed calm. Only pay?
This is the confusing tale of H.H. Holmes, America's most misunderstood murderer. Communication is crucial to building strong relationships at work. When I'm coordinating my own team, it's imperative that I come across as confident and capable. And I'm sure it's the same.
No. I don't know. I think it's imperative that you come across as yourself. Generally speaking, in relationships, like whatever your persona is has to be maintainable. It's also one of those things where, like, I guess I don't want people to like the version of me that I presented. I want them to actually like me. So best to be yourself. Tell the truth, even when it's hard. That's what you do if you want to be interesting. Anyways,
For you at your workplace.
that doesn't mean be a jackass all the time. Anyways.
That's where Grammarly comes in. Grammarly is a digital writing assistant that helps 30 million people
So you're cheating. Oh.
write more clearly and effectively every single day. It can
I don't like the idea of correcting everything in your writing per se. Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong and having like spell check or something like that, but I think there's a flawed kind of uh, intricacy or uniqueness to like humans writing it themselves and saying, "Oh, like this is how they made a mistake here" or something. And it makes it unique, kind of. That's what makes it unique, in my mind.
help to supercharge your productivity and move your projects along. Writing is literally my job, and I spend most of my week doing it, and I've actually been using Grammarly to sharpen how I
For the record, I don't really write these things out. I think for the most part, I just, go off all half-cocked. Maybe I should.
sound for a while now, and honestly, I love it. I especially like Grammarly Premium's tone rewrite suggestions, which can take your writing to the next level. I use Grammarly's confident framing feature to help me transform my communication. Grammarly turned what was a rather uncertain sounding email into a strong and confident one. When the stakes are high and time is short, it's easy to unintentionally come across as uncertain or unconfident. But with Grammarly, you can make sure your message comes across the ramp. And if you'd like to level up your writing
Must
and
be the
tone,
wind.
upgrade to Grammarly Premium for 20% off. Thanks to Grammarly for sponsoring this video. Holmes was born under the rather less enigmatic epithet of
Sorry, I should.
with the help of Grammarly. Go to grammarly.com/Thoughty2 to sign up for an account.
All right,
And if you'd like
there's
to
his
level
blog.
up your enigmatic epithet of Herman Webster Mudgett on the 16th of May
That is perhaps the least Mudgett in any case is the least threatening name ever.
1861 in the town of Gilmanton, New Hampshire. Almost nothing is known about his early years. Some sources claim he had an abusive alcoholic father and that his favourite childhood pastime was to torture the local wildlife. But those are just rumours with no documented evidence. Mudgett married at the age of just 17 to the first of what would eventually
There's like a really cool thing in storytelling, which I actually kind of like, and it's one of the reasons why I probably will never actually share a super much about like myself and where I come from or everything like that. It's one of those things where we, in the absence of actual fact, people fill in that space with whatever they want to fill it in. In stories, like I would say probably the author is only like doing maybe 50-70% of the work, and a lot of the like just the other parts of the stories, the little in between places, the person is filling all of that in themselves. And it's one of the things that you kind of lose when you're making a movie as opposed to writing a book. Because I think in the movies they have to actually kind of present a forced perspective of the the setting, the background, and with regards to maybe some of the characters that changes. Well, yeah, I don't know if that would necessarily be necessary, but it feels like a lot of times that ability to allow the audience or the whatever to do some of the work and to fill in the blank spaces themselves creates a very bespoke type of experience in the literary work, which I like. I can appreciate this sort of thing. It's kind of my story.
Before wives, though since he never bothered to actually divorce any of them, we can add bigamy to his soon-to-be long list of crimes. Mudgett was never a particular
Bigamy. Technically, why is it called bigamy if you're marrying more than one woman? Like, oh, well, if you marry more than two women. Technically, no, I think that would actually, I think you might be wrong here. I think that would be called polygamy once you've passed two wives. Because bigamy would be just married to more than one woman. Well, no, I think it'd be married to two women. The prefix bi or whatever. Bigamy.
strong student, but he managed to scrape his way to a medical degree from the University of Michigan. And it was there
Huzzah!
that we hear rumors of his earliest crimes. Despite his reputation as one of America's most notorious serial killers, Mudgett's first felonious forays didn't involve creating cadavers,
Nice alliteration.
but selling them. In those days, corpses were a surprisingly valuable commodity, sold on the black market to medical schools for anatomical research. And Mudgett was only too happy to dig up the deceased from the local cemeteries in order to make some fast cash. Or at least that's what several sources claim. Again, there's no real evidence to prove he was a body snatcher, but that probably shouldn't come as much of a surprise. I'm no criminal mastermind.
That's weird. When you think of grave robbers, you mostly think of people who are stealing valuables from the deceased or something like that.
But if I was in the business of selling
Not
corpses,
actually stealing the deceased.
I probably wouldn't write receipts. We do know that body snatching was relatively commonplace at the time, and Michigan University was a bit of a hotspot. There's also the probably not coincidental fact that after his execution some years later, Holmes was so worried someone might have come along and dug up his remains that he asked to be buried in a block of solid concrete 10 feet underground. So yeah, there's a fair chance this particular Holmes rumor is actually true.
My Stitch
I don't know if I want to be buried in concrete. There's this terrible, it's a stupid and irrational thing, but you're always like, what if I, am not dead somehow? So I'd prefer to have. There's a whole thing actually where they had like dead ringers, which I think was some sort of a bell that they would have attached to the person, so that if they happen to be buried alive, it would be all right. They could ring the bell or something like that. Yeah.
Fix stylist just convinced me to never step foot in a mall ever again. All I did was tell Stitch Fix that I'm 4'11" and then answer some other questions about my personal style. You gotta see what they sent me.
After graduating in 1884, Mudgett worked several odd jobs across America's Northeast.
Yeah, actually, in reference to that advertisement, I think people underestimate. I think there's never mind. No, do mind. I think there's a lot of variability in how to look good quite often. And I think a lot of people find if you can find your look or your vibe and make it work, that can take almost any form. It's something to bear in mind. You just have to search it out and bring it home.
Gaining a reputation as a bit of a womanizer and a lot of a con man. 2 years later, he moved to Chicago, where he restyled himself under the now infamous pseudonym of Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, H.H. Holmes to his mates. Most historians agree the name change was designed to stop the various people he'd swindled from tracking him down. But I'm guessing he was also just a bit sick of having a name like a squib from Harry Potter.
It's true.
According to the traditional tale, on arriving in Chicago, he found work at a local pharmacy, where he eventually murdered his boss to seize control of the business. In truth, Mudgett, well, Holmes, bought the drugstore fair and square. Far from being Holmes's victims, the previous owners outlived him by several decades, a fact that's proven by the dates on their headstones, which still survive to this day. Between the pharmacy and a growing list of illegal activities, Holmes was fast becoming a wealthy man. So he did what any of us would do with a bit of spare cash. He bought an empty plot of land and started work on a giant death factory. We've all been there.
Mine is personally an apocalypse machine, but yeah.
This grand building you see before you, known today as the Murder Castle, was the result. Now,
Yeah, there's certain types of archaic, architecture and whatnot that I like. I don't know if this is one of them. I like the bricks and kind of half-rounded window openings and whatnot like that. I don't know what that should be called, but it's kind of just a type of a retro. Well, actually, he has it right here. That type of style. You have like red brick and stuff like that. There's some types of architecture just kind of suck.
if you happen to be
They're depressing in my mind. In any case.
especially observant, you may have already noticed that this infamous castle looks suspiciously like a fairly standard mixed-use commercial building. And it turns out there's a good reason for that, because that's exactly what it was. There were shops on the ground floor and apartments above. Holmes added a third story in 1892, which he plans to use as a hotel, but it was never finished. In 1893, Chicago played host to a World's Fair, a 6-month bonanza that attracted a staggering 27 million visitors.
Sweet glory. I guess at the time that would have been rather impressive.
Probably the most famous element of the commonly told H.H. Holmes story is that he built his murder castle to take advantage of this huge influx of tourists. In the era before people posted 450 social media updates every single minute, tourists were vulnerable. Their friends and relatives often had little idea of exactly.
That's true. Like the one thing we take for granted a lot these days. Well, to be fair, I don't know if it always helps. You see videos of people doing dumb stuff anyways, but it feels like one of the things that you maybe take for granted is that like there's a lot of cameras everywhere all the time. You can solve a lot of crimes that way, I imagine. In spite of the insufferability of IRL streamers, it's kind of nice sometimes to have it on camera.
Where they were at any one time. So, according to the story, Holmes built his murdery mansion as a way of ensnaring large numbers of hard-to-trace World's Fair visitors, preferably young women ripe for murdering. That all sounds fairly logical. Well, if you're a serial killer, but
It sounds sensational. There's an appeal there that might not be entirely logical.
it turns out that Holmes started building this castle several years before the Chicago World's Fair had even been planned.
Know someone who wakes up at every little noise? Here's the perfect gift for them: loop earplugs. Quick.
Admittedly, work on the 3rd floor did roughly coincide with the announcement of the fair, but we can be fairly certain he didn't lure any young women there for Netflix and dismemberment, because the hotel was never actually finished. Yes, several people were indeed murdered on the premises. More on that in a minute, but the whole murder castle concept is total nonsense. The original
Hello?
architectural plans for the building don't show any secret passageways, trapdoors, or purpose-built torture chambers, and the
To be fair, there's this kind of romanticization that goes with secret passages. That's a pretty cool thing, just in general. I thought it'd be cool to build a house and have some sort of secret passage. Bootleggers, I think, used to do that. Catholics may have done that at some points, just because they were a little bit persecution, because they're weird and they have the Vatican and stuff like that.
Building simply wasn't big enough to have enclosed the complex labyrinth later accounts claimed. Almost all these wild stories came from the press after Holmes was finally brought to justice a few years later. It might sound unlikely that journalists could have gotten the details of the case so incredibly wrong, but Holmes's capture happened to coincide with the heyday of what's now known as yellow journalism, a style of reporting where newspapers just made everything up to sell more copies.
Can't imagine. So I don't think we're maybe necessarily that bad, but might be getting there some places. Everyone thinks they need to add their 2 cents to the news.
Why does that sound familiar?
Oh, that's actually probably a little bit better. YouTube would maybe be a better example of that. Well, at least the thumbnails themselves are. I'm not sure if the videos themselves are maybe super terrible, but they like the headlines of videos, the proverbial headlines of videos, I guess, are definitely kind of in that category.
But whilst there's no evidence to
Call it better than truthful.
Building was some kind of murder metropolis, it was used as the base of operations for a wide range of less gruesome cons and schemes. To put it simply, if H.H. Holmes believed something could make him money, he was already doing it. During his criminal career, he's known to have forged checks, stolen horses, bought expensive items on credit with no intention of ever paying off the loans, and defrauded a wide variety of insurance firms in multiple ingenious ways. But whilst he wasn't the mass murdering maniac most people think he was, Holmes was still a killer, and a pretty prolific one at that. We know for sure that he murdered 4 people. And there's a good chance there were at least 9 victims. The first is thought to have been Julia Connor, the wife of one of Holmes' employees, Ned. Holmes and Julia started an affair in the early 1890s, and when Ned found out, he quite understandably quit his job and moved away. Not long afterwards, Julia and her daughter Pearl went missing, never to be seen again. We don't know.
That's creepy. Again, I've said this before. Anyone who's going to cheat on their spouse to be with you will also cheat on you. Like, oh no, I'm this. No, you're not the special one, okay? And for the record, I don't know that from personal experience. I just feel like the entire logic to that whole notion is like, okay, but you're the one that. No, it's not the way
For
reality
sure what
seems to
happened
work.
to them, but Holmes later claimed Julia had fallen pregnant and that she died when he attempted to perform an illegal abortion. It's generally assumed he killed Pearl because she knew too much about the circumstances of her mother's death and, therefore, represented a dangerous loose end. Julia's remains were never found, but the body of a girl of about Pearl's age was dug up in Holmes's cellar after his arrest.
At Wells Fargo, we get it. You started your business to spend time on the things you love, not banking. That's why we offer business checking, payments, and lending all in one place. You're good at business?
Like a good heritage name.
We're good at business banking. Wells Fargo.
Wasn't Wells Fargo the stage company?
This game, you're not ready for it.
5 months
I
after
look up that
Julia and
sometime.
Pearl went missing, Holmes struck again in incredibly similar circumstances.
Well, this was again like what are you talking about? Is it better that he wasn't some sort of psycho who was just doing it like prolifically because he really enjoyed torturing people and crap, or because he's just kind of crimes of opportunity type thing?
He started a relationship with one of his employees, Emmeline Sagranda, before she suddenly went missing. Once
Emmeline Sigrand, not Sigrande. You limey bastard. I'm sorry. That was extreme. I think that's how you'd say it, at least in our accent. Emmeline Sigrand.
again, Holmes
Which I'm pretty sure would mean like Scandinavian. You know what? Just to piss people off sometime, I want to use the word like niggard more. I believe that's also a Scandinavian word for laziness or something. Yeah, like a niggardly sum. It's just to shock people, just for the shock value of it. I need to use that more. No,
Claimed a botched
maybe not.
abortion was to blame. In retrospect, that man probably shouldn't have had a medical license. Yeah. The following year, 2 more women with ties to Holmes disappeared. Minnie and Nanny
Sweet
Williams.
glory.
As with all the others, the details are sketchy, but it's
It feels like the most, like, we maybe think of serial killers as being crazy smart and one like that. It seems kind of stupid way to solve your problems. The most kind of blundering way. Like if I don't know.
thought Holmes scammed them out of
To be fair, it is very permanent, but it feels like you could find like an easier solution to it for the most part.
some property, then murdered them before they had a chance to go to the police. Much like Julia
What's
Connor
this?
murdered them. The details are clear. Yeah. The following year, 2 more women with ties to Holmes disappeared. Minnie and Nanny Williams. As with all the others, the details are sketchy, but it's thought Holmes scammed them out of some property.
Dang it. All right.
2 more women with ties to Holmes disappeared. Minnie and Nanny Williams. As with all the others, the details are sketchy, but it's thought Holmes scammed them out of some property, then murdered them before they had a chance to go to the police. Much like Julia Connor and Emmeline Sagranda, their bodies were never found. There are several more stories about people turning up at Holmes's castle, never to be seen again, and several of them are quite possibly true. But convincing evidence is extremely thin on the ground, and it's likely we'll never know for sure how many people Holmes killed. Though there's zero chance it was anywhere near the commonly circulated 200. By 1894, he'd swindled and murdered so many people in Chicago that he decided it was probably best to move on. He traveled first to Fort Worth, then St. Louis, and it was there that the law
That's awesome. Psychopaths tend to be itinerant. They piss off all the people where they are until people catch on, and then they have to move somewhere.
finally caught up with him. Considering he was very probably a serial killer at this point, it's almost laughable that Holmes was jailed for the heinous crime of failing to pay off store credit. Remarkably, it was his first stint in jail, and whilst he didn't stay behind bars for long, his brief incarceration kicked off a chain of events that would eventually lead to him being hanged for murder. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Whilst in jail, Holmes met a man by the name of Marion Hedgepeth, better known as the Handsome Bandit.
All right. I'll leave the rest of that to you. You can watch the rest of that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe it's just old pictures or whatever. I like handsome might be stretching it a little bit. Also, styles have changed over the years. That's another thing that might affect our perception of older people's, not older people's, like beauties of antiquity sometimes look just different because the standards of beauty have changed. All right, moving on.